Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into something that I think is super relevant to all of us, no matter what your background is, market segmentation.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of us probably have a vague sense of what market segmentation is. Like we see ads and we kind of feel like, wait a minute, is that targeted to me specifically? Like, how did they know?
Right.
So that's what we're going to unpack today. And I've got a whole stack of articles and research papers here. It's a lot to get through.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But luckily, I've got Clear's throat. Excuse me, I've got our expert here to help me break it all down. So welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So let's start with the basics. What is market segmentation?
So, in a nutshell, market segmentation is how businesses divide a market of potential customers into smaller groups
Okay.
based on shared characteristics.
Okay, so it's kind of like instead of having a one-size-fits-all message, you're trying to tailor your message to specific groups. Why is that so important?
Well, we're bombarded with marketing messages constantly. I mean, think about it.
Oh, yeah.
Every time you go online, watch TV.
It's overwhelming.
Exactly. And segmentation allows companies to cut through that noise and connect with consumers on a more personal level.
So it's not just about getting your message out there. It's about getting your message out there to the right people.
Exactly.
Okay, so how do businesses actually do this? I mean, where do they even begin to segment the market?
Right. So there are a few different ways to approach it. One of the most common is demographic segmentation.
Okay, so that's things like age, gender.
Yeah. Age, gender, income level, education, things like that.
Right. So if you're selling like, I don't know, skateboards, you're probably not going to target like, retirees.
Right. You're going to target a younger demographic.
Okay, that makes sense. But, people are more than just their demographics, right?
Exactly. And that's where psychographic segmentation comes in.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this psychographic segmentation.
So psychographics, it goes deeper than just demographics. It looks at people's values, their interests, their lifestyles, their attitudes, their beliefs.
So it's less about like who they are on paper and more about what makes them tick.
Exactly.
Okay, that's fascinating.
Yeah. So for example, you could have two people who are the same age, same income level, but they have completely different lifestyles. One might be really into fitness and healthy living. The other one might be more into like travel and trying new restaurants.
Great. So how do you even begin to gather that kind of information?
That's where things get really interesting. Well, businesses use a variety of methods to gather data, like surveys, for instance.
Okay.
They might use quizzes, or even just look at your online activity, like what websites you visit or what you buy online.
So it's kind of like they're piecing together this puzzle about who you are as a consumer.
Exactly. And they use that information to then create marketing messages that are more likely to resonate with you.
Okay, so that brings us to another question. We've talked about demographic and psychographic segmentation, but what about the where factor? I mean, surely location plays a role in all of this, right?
Absolutely. You're talking about geographic segmentation.
Okay.
And it's pretty straightforward. It's basically segmenting the market based on where people live.
Okay.
So, for example, a company that sells, let's say, winter coats is probably going to focus their marketing efforts in areas that, actually have cold weather.
Right. You're not going to see a lot of ads for parkas in like Florida.
Exactly. Or, a company might target a specific city or even a neighborhood if they know that their product or service is particularly popular in that area.
So they're really trying to pinpoint their ideal customer down to their zip code, practically.
Exactly.
Okay. So we've got the who, the why, and the where. Anything else we're missing?
Well, there's also behavioral segmentation.
Behavioral segmentation, what is that all about?
So this one focuses on how people actually behave.
Okay.
Like their buying habits, their brand loyalty, how often they use a particular product or service.
Okay.
So, for example, a company that sells coffee might target their ads to people who regularly visit coffee shops or who buy coffee online.
Oh, okay. So it's like they're tracking my caffeine addiction.
Maybe.
Okay. So we've got all these different ways to slice and dice the market. But how do businesses actually use this information to, sell us stuff? How does it translate into actual marketing campaigns?
Right. So let's say you're that online bookstore we were talking about earlier.
Okay. Yeah.
And you've identified a segment of your customers who are really into historical fiction.
Okay.
And you also know that they tend to be environmentally conscious.
Okay.
So how could you use that information to market to them effectively?
Well, I guess you could recommend books that are both historical fiction and maybe have some kind of environmental theme.
Okay, so it's all about tailoring your message to resonate with that specific group's interest.
Precisely.
Wow,
Yeah.
this is fascinating and kind of creepy, but mostly fascinating.
Yeah, it's definitely a powerful tool.
So we've talked about the benefits of market segmentation. I mean, it's clearly a win for businesses because it helps them sell more effectively. But are there any downsides? Like, are there any ethical considerations here?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like any tool, market segmentation can be misused.
Okay.
One of the big ones is the potential for discrimination.
Okay, how so?
Well, if you're not careful, you could end up targeting or excluding certain groups of people based on factors like race, religion, or sexual orientation,
Right.
which is obviously not only unethical, but also illegal in many cases.
Absolutely.
And then there's the issue of privacy.
Okay.
I mean, we're talking about collecting a lot of data on people.
And it's important to make sure that that data is being used responsibly and ethically.
So transparency is key.
Absolutely. Consumers need to know what information is being collected about them and how it's being used.
And they have the right to opt out.
Exactly.
Okay, so it sounds like market segmentation, it's a powerful tool, but it's
Mhm.
important to use it responsibly.
Exactly.
Okay, well, I think that about wraps up our deep dive into market segmentation.
Yeah, I think we covered a lot of ground today.
We did. From the basics of what market segmentation is to the different ways it's used, the benefits, the drawbacks, the ethical considerations, and of course how it impacts all of us as consumers.
Right.
So the next time you see an ad that feels a little too well placed,
Mm,
you'll know that there's a whole lot of market segmentation magic going on behind the scenes.
exactly.
All right, well, that's it for this episode. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll catch you next time on The Deep Dive.